Justin Lyons had no idea what he was in for that day. It was the 4th of September 2006, and he had to get up super early that morning to get a head start at his job. He was a cameraman on a nature documentary at the time. That day they were going to be exploring the Bat Reef in Queensland, Australia, and they were hoping to capture some of the unique ecosystems that exist there. So he got to his studio, assembled his gear. He had a lot of specialized wet gear and underwater cameras for days like this. He was kind of known for his underwater photography. And by the time the sun was up, he and the documentary host were just cruising around in an inflatable dinghy, wearing snorkel gear, looking for something interesting to capture. They didn't have a whole lot of luck at first. They caught a few things here and there, but it wasn't anything they hadn't already shot in dozens of other places. When suddenly they spotted an enormous short-tailed stingray gliding through the water. It had a wingspan of like 2 to 2.5 feet, pretty big for a stingray, so like immediately Justin, the host, jumped in the water to get some footage. After getting some good shots of it, like swimming below the camera, above the camera, interacting with the host and whatnot, the host decided he wanted to get a shot of him swimming over the top of the stingray. And that's when everything went wrong. The ray, which is normally a very docile creature, got startled. It saw his shadow, got freaked out, it whipped its tail around a little bit at the host and then swam away. So Justin followed the stingray with his camera as it swam away, but when he turned back to the host, he noticed that the water was all murky. It took him a second to realize it was blood. The ray had not only managed to stick this guy, but in a 1,000,000-to-1 shot, it actually punctured his clothing, entered his chest, happened to go right between a couple of ribs, and lodged itself into his heart. Justin got him back up onto the dinghy and struggled to save him, but there was nothing he could do at that point. The host remained conscious just long enough to say, "I'm dying," and then died. And that's how on that day, in that dinghy, Justin Lyon became the sole witness to the last words of Steve Irwin. I know, you saw it coming a mile away. Except he wasn't the only witness. His camera was still rolling. Steve had a policy on his show to keep the camera rolling at all times, even if he was in danger. Actually, especially if he was in danger. That was his whole thing. In fact, he used to joke in interviews that he'd be really sad if his death wasn't caught on camera. So I guess he kind of got his wish. His death was caught on tape. Footage of it exists. And the internet is obsessed with finding it. Now, some of that's just morbid curiosity. Some of it might be wanting a sense of closure. You know, he was a beloved figure in the lives of many people when they were kids. There's also just the randomness of how he died. I mean, this is a guy who was made, they call him the crocodile hunter. He made a living taunting wild man-eating crocodiles for fun. And he was killed by one of the most harmless animals in the ocean. Like, I'll be honest, when I found out that he died, I mean, I was sad. It was sad. But I wasn't surprised. Oh, that guy who wrestled crocodiles on TV died. Hey, that was on my bingo card. But a stingray? Do you know how many divers have been killed by stingrays? 20. Not last year, or the last 5 years or 10 years. That is since they started keeping records of stingray attacks in 1945. Over 80 years. 20 people. And somehow Steve Irwin is one of them. That is bonkers and hard to believe. And knowing that there's footage out there, that there's proof of this, I mean, I get it. According to his widow, Terry Irvin, she had the footage destroyed, but that hasn't stopped the internet from looking for it. But maybe the biggest reason is just because it's there. It exists. And people love to solve a mystery. This is true of the death of Steve Irwin and many other examples of lost media. So today we're going to talk about some of the more compelling lost media stories and ask why we're so obsessed with them. So all the stories we'll be talking about here have their own bit of internet lore around them, so there's no shortage of articles and other videos out there that you can refer to. I'll link to some great videos down below, but I've assembled some of my favorites, and I'll just be, covering them in my own devil-may-care style. The devil cares a great deal. I've got them ordered kind of mildest to craziest, and I've organized them into 4 categories: lost entertainment, historical, accidental deaths, and truly awful, which as a subcategory I've titled, What the Actual Seriously, the last one gets super dark. But maybe the best way to dip our toes into the whole lost media thing is to cover a piece of lost media that was actually found. Because that's what everybody's trying to make happen, right? And it happens a lot. But I'll focus on one that just got uncovered last year. This is one of my favorites. I'm sorry, this is so funny to me. It's a song called Everyone Knows That, or just EKT for short. It first appeared in 2001 on a website called What's That Song? Oh, early internet, why did you have to die? It was posted by a user named Carl92 who shared 17 seconds of a song, which he claims he had accidentally recorded and then couldn't figure out what the song was. And it does sound familiar. It does have this very universal 80s sound to it, right? Like I know this vibe. Who is this? And the voice, I mean, it's right there, you know? It's that guy. It's that guy. Like, pick any issue of Tiger Beat from 1986. It could be any of those guys. Like, it feels like a song you should remember, but you don't. And I think that just kind of made it like a splinter in the mind of everybody on the internet because, like, the search was on at that point. Internet sleuths combed through the music libraries of multiple artists from the time. When there was nothing in their catalogs, they scoured the internet for unreleased songs from those artists. There was speculation that it might have been from a stock music library, so people hunted down all the catalogs from stock music companies looking for a match. Many searched copyrighted trademark records for songs with the names Everybody Knows That. And Ulterior Motives was another song that they searched for because the title was always like Everyone Knows That, in parentheses, Ulterior Motives. And for a while, there was a leading theory that a lot of people were exploring that it was actually from a TV show in Spain from the 80s. And now people were hunting down obscure Spanish TV shows. People were even debating a few sounds that were recorded in the background of the song and trying to see if that gives a clue. Meanwhile, the original poster, Carl92, completely vanished. He answered some questions and was part of the conversation in the beginning, but then once it started to attract a lot of attention, yeah, he just kind of dipped out. Anyway, it's just kind of been a big internet mystery this whole time, but it really started picking up steam in the last few years. Maybe it's the 80s music nostalgia moment that we're all living through, or maybe the interest in it just hit critical mass, but suddenly everybody was talking about Everyone Knows That. It was on TikTok, there were posters with QR codes, there were television interviews with subredditors. EKT became the holy grail for lost media hunters. The search had gone on for so long, actually, that many started to question if it even existed at all. Like it was maybe just a big hoax. Like Carl92 had somehow crafted the most believable fake song ever, and it was just pranking the internet with it, especially since, he kind of disappeared. But then in April of 2024, almost exactly a year ago, EKT was found. And no, it was not an April Fool's joke, but it was really funny. You see, the thing is, out of the many, many theories, one of them was that it was from an adult film. Most people did not take this theory seriously, but one guy did. A Redditor named OneTruth5867 took it upon themselves to get a list of all the porn produced between 1985 and 1987, which is roughly the years that people expected that the song was made based on style and the synth instruments at the time. And this guy left no stone or boob unturned and set out to watch every last one of them. He said he was watching up to 65 adult films every week, which is an impressive thing to do with just one hand. Eventually, dozens of others joined in the hunt. They got organized around it. They split up the movies so that nothing got missed. And they say nobody wants to work anymore. But eventually, finally, a user named South Pole Ball won the Golden Goon Sesh when he heard the song in a 1986 adult film called Angels of Passion. Yeah, it played on top of a sex scene, and there just happened to be a short period between moans and vocalizations that lasted exactly 17 seconds. Which finally solved the mystery of what that background noise was. Flesh. It was flesh. So it seems that what happened was that the original poster, Carl92, was watching some old VHS tapes from that box in the back of the closet, heard that song and thought, hey, that's a banger. I wonder who made that song. I wonder if I could find it. So he clipped out the non-sexual bit, posted it online, lied about where he got it from because he was embarrassed. And then that mystery became super popular, attracted a bunch of people, got a lot of attention, and he got embarrassed and deleted his account. So he knew where the clip came from. He could have said it was from Angels of Passion 20 years ago, and the mystery would have been solved. But no, Carl had to distance himself from it. He had to be embarrassed to save his business, I guess. Just think of all those poor people that had to watch an objectively unhealthy amount of 80s porn because of you. If you're going to be a pervert, at least be a good pervert. Anyway, once they figured out the movie, it wasn't long before the actual song was found, which was actually titled Ulterior Motives, so they got the title half right. And ironically, everyone knows that isn't even right. The lyrics are actually everyone knows it, which everyone knows it rhymes better with ulterior motives, so that makes sense. But yeah, all this time people were calling EKT for short, and that's not even right, it's EKI. It was written by brothers Christopher and Philip Booth in the mid-1980s. They were basically working as PAs in the film industry and sort of did music on the side, so yeah, for extra money sometimes they'd record some songs and sell them to porn studios. So this was just a song they spat out for some extra cash back in 1985. They probably forgot about it the day after the check cleared. But yeah, I mean, I don't know, somehow they kind of just captured lightning in a bottle with this song. Lightning that wouldn't go off for 40 years. They had no idea that literally hundreds of people were out there clamoring for their work. And now they've re-recorded it, and they're actually working on an 80s album. You can find it on Spotify. So if EKT, or EKI, I guess, teaches us anything, it's that you never know. Even after 20 years, these things can just suddenly appear. But you see how satisfying that is to solve a mystery? I mean, it's no wonder people obsess over lost media so much. They long for that satisfying conclusion. None of the other stories have a satisfying conclusion. There's actually a lot of lost movies and TV shows for a couple of reasons. One, there's just been a lot of stuff that's been made over the last century or so there's a lot of stuff to lose. And two, old film canisters and video reels, these things take up space, and they're expensive to store and maintain. And they do degrade over time. So one movie that the internet's kind of latched on to is a 1967 horror comedy called Batman Fights Dracula. So the Philippines, like many other countries, they've got their own film industry going on there. They've got their own thing happening. And in the 60s, they kind of became known for parodies of American films because of a loophole in copyright laws. Batman parodies especially were popular, and one of the first ones was called Batman Fights Dracula. The plot, if you can call it that, involved a mad scientist named Zorba who tries to defeat Batman and his sidekick Reuben by resurrecting Dracula. I mean, Dracula does turn into a bat, so he's sort of a man-bat. And this movie was popular. It was screened in theaters all over the Philippines. We still have posters and advertisements for the movie. There's behind the scenes and promotional photos. But the film itself seems to be gone. No clips of it whatsoever survive. This one is thought that it's probably completely lost, likely due to poor archival practices. Now, right around the same time, in the early 1960s, we started recording video on magnetic tape. And magnetic tape back then was super expensive. It was new, but one thing that it had going for it was, unlike film, it was reusable. So instead of, saving and archiving tape back then, they'd often just record over it, which is exactly what happened to nearly 100 episodes of Doctor Who. Yes, the beloved BBC show Doctor Who, which got started in 1963 and is still going to this day. It's missing 97 episodes from its first 6 seasons. And yeah, it happened for all the reasons I just said. The BBC used to wipe their tapes until 1978, and that's when VHS came along and they realized that they could sell old episodes on VHS. Now, a number of episodes have been recovered by reaching out to overseas broadcasters like telerecordings from Hong Kong. Some are thought to be in the hands of private collectors, so there's still a chance that some of them might turn up. The Whovians are hopeful anyway. But the single most sought-after episode is called The 10th Planet, and this actually ends with the first Doctor's regeneration into the second Doctor, which the next couple of stories aren't so much media that's been lost or destroyed, but withheld for control reasons. The first one is the Chris Farley Shrek cut. Yeah, it's hard to imagine now, but Chris Farley was the original voice of Shrek, and he had actually recorded 85% of the film before he sadly died in 1997. Yeah, I hate to say it, but that was another one that wasn't a big shocker to me. But yeah, the studio originally considered maybe hiring an impersonator to finish the film with Chris Farley's voice, but ultimately, Mike Myers came in to do the film in honor of his dead friend. So the Chris Farley cut does exist out there somewhere, but it never gets shown. Nobody's ever seen it or can talk about it, so it's considered lost. There are a few scenes that have been made available, so here's a taste of the Shrek that could have been.
Nothing like a fire and a noble romantic mission to warm the cockles of your heart.
Yeah.
I like my cockles room temperature, thank you very much.
Hey, if you're not doing this for cockle woman, why are you doing it?
Simple. Fartwad gets his princess, I get what I want.
Which is? Now come on, what do you want?
I don't have time to set it to music.
Which, amazingly, there's kind of a lost Mike Myers cut, too, because he originally re-recorded the entire film just in his own voice, not with the Scottish accent. Shrek just sounded like him.
I'm no one's messenger boy, okay? I'm a delivery boy.
But then he decided he wanted to do it in a Scottish accent, because that's kind of his thing.
If it's no Scottish, it's crap!
So he re-recorded it. Shrek obviously went on to become a cultural phenomenon, and that voice became synonymous with the character, but yeah, there could have been a very different version released. Another popular animated film from around that time was Toy Story, and it's no secret that the script went through a lot of changes. There's nothing unusual about that. But specifically, a lot's been made about how earlier versions were a lot darker, especially with Woody's character. If somehow you've never seen it, Woody is the main character voiced by Tom Hanks, and he's Andy's favorite toy. So he's kind of like the alpha dog in the toy pack. And the whole movie is about him kind of dealing with Buzz Lightyear showing up and becoming Andy's new favorite toy and all the rejection and jealousy that comes with that. And in the final version of the film, Woody definitely is a bit full of himself at the beginning, you know, being the top dog and whatnot. His character arc is all about getting past that. But in earlier versions, he was just a straight up ass. And all of this voiceover was recorded and sketched out in an animatic. They had gotten that far into the process. So somewhere out there is an alternate version of Toy Story that's a lot darker, and they call it the Black Friday cut. Now, this is apparently like a real alternate version of Toy Story. And it's been known to come out at Pixar parties from time to time, like just a handful of people have ever seen it. But yeah, it's real. Just locked away in a safe somewhere. There is one clip from this version that has been released, and yeah, if this is any indication, Woody was not a good guy.
Woody! I'd just like to wish you luck. I know you'd do the same for me.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, there you go.
Whoa! Whoa!
What?
He just threw that guy right out the window. Although I'm a little sad that the public was deprived of the line, "Who said your job was to think, Spring Wiener?"
Who said your job was to think, Spring Wiener?
So, you know, stories like that where the film gets almost completely finished and then the director was like, wait, this isn't working, and they, you know, kind of start over from the beginning. That's not unusual. That happens a lot. What is unusual is when a director gets to that point and takes one look at the film and says, nah, nobody's ever going to see this. That is exactly what happened to the infamous Jerry Lewis film, The Day the Clown Cried. So Jerry Lewis was known as a slapstick comedian, about the most broad comedy you can imagine, lots of mugging for the camera, over-the-top characters. He was kind of the Jim Carrey of the 1960s. And just like Jim Carrey eventually turned to more dramatic roles, Jerry Lewis wanted to be taken more seriously at one point. So in 1972, he decided to put on his dramatic shoes. And he decided to put on the biggest drama shoes he could get. Clown-sized drama shoes. So, okay. In The Day the Clown Cried, Jerry Lewis plays a German circus clown during the Holocaust who gets arrested and thrown into a prison camp. This camp also holds Jewish families that are being separated by a fence, and being a clown, he decides to entertain the Jewish kids by performing shows from across the fence. One day, the Nazi guards see him entertaining the kids and gives them an idea. So they approach our titular clown and say, hey, we could use your help. You see, we've been having a lot of trouble getting these kids to go into the gas chambers. You think you could just kind of Pied Piper them in there for us? In exchange, they offer to review his case, meaning he might get out of prison. So do it, and he might get out of prison. Don't do it, and he'll be stuck there until they decide to stop feeding him. Oh, and the kids will be killed anyway. Maybe even entertaining them in their final moments is the kind thing to do? Anyway, at the end of the movie, he decides to do it, but he's so overcome with guilt about it that when they arrive at the gas chambers, he steps in and joins them, and they all die together. The end.
What the f***?
This film has gone down in Hollywood lore as one of the worst things that has ever been recorded. It was so heavily criticized for its lack of tact that Jerry Lewis just straight up didn't finish the film. He called it an artistic disaster, saying, quote, "You will never see it. No one will ever see it because I am embarrassed at the poor work." One of the few people who has seen it and written about it is the actor Harry Shearer from Spinal Tap and Simpsons fame. After a private screening, he wrote, quote, "But seeing this film was really awe-inspiring in that you are rarely in the presence of a perfect object. This was a perfect object. This movie is so drastically wrong, its pathos and its comedy are so wildly misplaced that you could not, in your fantasy of what it might be like, improve on what it truly is. Oh my God, that's all you can say." Jerry Lewis handed over the footage to the Library of Congress with a stipulation that it not be released until 2024. Okay, so this last one in the lost entertainment category might be stretching the definition of entertainment a bit, but it is considered an art film, so I'll count it here. The movie's called Heartbeat in the Brain. It was shot in 1970, and in it, artist and filmmaker Amanda Fielding drills a hole through her skull and exposes her brain tissue. Yeah, so we're getting into the grotesque part of the episode here. So if you need a content warning, if you're that type of person, you need a trigger warning or whatever, just consider this your content warning because it gets pretty gnarly from here. So Amanda Fielding was fascinated with trepanation, which is the practice of drilling a hole through the skull for various reasons. Ancient cave people did it, probably to cure headaches or let a demon out or something, but they found skulls where some bit of skull was actually cut out and has healed, so people did survive this. It's been used to help relieve pressure if there's swelling of the brain, amongst other things, so there is a medical use for it. But then, of course, there's the weirdos that do it because they think it'll give them a spiritual experience because of the increased blood flow or whatever. Mayhaps try a mushroom, ma'am. Anyway, she wanted to capture this on film for this art project. She couldn't find a healthcare worker or professional to assist her with this, so she just kind of turned on the camera and did it herself. It screened once at an art gallery in 1978. People fainted. It was a whole thing and was never seen again. But yeah, outside of a few private screenings, this has not seen the light of day. And while it is considered a legitimate work of art, it's just kind of too gruesome for most audiences. A few clips have been shown in various documentaries about the project, but Fielding has no desire to release the work in its entirety. Chances are you're never going to see it. Entertainment lost media is fun and all, but some lost media has actual historical significance. These are the ones that big old conspiracies come out of, because we live in a pics or it didn't happen world. So let's just talk about the death of Osama bin Laden. In the years after 9/11, Osama bin Laden became a household name. He might have been the most famous person in the world, just a shorthand we all use for pure evil. We started 2 wars. We scoured the earth and wrote country songs about putting boots in asses. We focused all of our righteous vengeance to find and punish this one man for years. And then it happened.
Tonight, I can report to the American people and to the world that the United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama bin Laden, the leader of al-Qaeda.
In May of 2011, almost 10 years after the attacks on the World Trade Center, Osama bin Laden was killed in Pakistan during a targeted attack by U.S. Special Forces. The units were using body cameras, and the death was recorded. The second he died, they were in a race against time because Muslim tradition dictates that the deceased should be buried within 24 hours. But the problem was, no countries wanted him to be buried there. Like, he was born in Saudi Arabia, but Saudi Arabia didn't want him, so they had to perform a sea burial aboard the USS Carl Vinson. Another reason for the sea burial was to avoid his tomb becoming a shrine. There were still a lot of Al-Qaeda and ISIS out there. They didn't want his death to become a rallying cry. Which is also why they chose to not release the video of his death or of his burial. They didn't want a repeat of what happened with Saddam Hussein in 2003. There were still a lot of American forces in Iraq and Afghanistan that could be targets for retaliation if, bin Laden's death became a circus. So they didn't release any footage to avoid fanning the flames, and that was probably the right choice at the time. Of course, this has caused some people to think that it never actually happened, but the attack definitely did happen. It was documented. There were eyewitness reports on both sides. And yes, there are high-level experts and world leaders that have been allowed to see the photos and have reported back that it is real. But I think why people are so obsessed with bin Laden footage is that, we had just spent so long focusing our national rage on this one man, and we never really got closure on that. So, just knowing that it's out there, that it exists, it just kind of sparks a curiosity. Going a little bit further back, there's the Nixon-Haldeman tapes. So you know how people are now recording their work meetings or lessons at school and then just kind of like putting it into ChatGPT and getting a bullet point version of it that they can use. Like Zoom and Google both have their little AI tools that transcribe and generate summaries of the meetings. Like that's the hot technology now. Well, in the 60s, that hot technology was just audio tape, just the ability to record your meeting on tape and then have someone transcribe it later on. That was a huge new thing. And Nixon was all about it. He basically just wired his office for sound and then recorded at all times because you never know when an important conversation might take place, you know? But it was these very recordings that got him implicated in the Watergate scandal. So during the investigation, Nixon handed over his recordings to the Watergate investigators. They did find several incriminating statements that he had made, but what got their attention the most is what wasn't there. 3 days after the Watergate break-in, President Nixon met with his Chief of Staff, Bob Haldeman, to discuss the incident. But right in the middle of their conversation, there's a huge chunk of audio missing, like 18 and a half minutes worth. What happened? So according to the official story, it was accidentally recorded over by his secretary, Rosemary Woods, while she was doing the transcription. At least that's the story. Most people think that they covered up something incriminating. Part of the evidence for that is that Bob Haldeman was an avid note taker. He was kind of known for doing like 5 to 6 pages of notes. But when they went through his notes of that meeting, it seemed to be missing a page or two. Interesting that. The National Archives and Records Administration owns the tape, and they've tried many times to recover what was originally on there, but nothing's ever worked. So unless some future technology comes along that can actually peel back that segment somehow, it's likely going to be a subject of debate for quite a long time. And then there are the video diaries made by Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold in the months leading up to the Columbine shooting. They were found during the investigation, and they wound up getting the name The Basement Tapes. Not to be confused with Bob Dylan's 16th album. But yeah, Eric and Bob Dylan, it's weird, okay. They shot a series of home videos leading up to their big shooting in 1999, and the tapes didn't really soften their image much. These tapes were a deluge of anger and violence, rage, aggression, racial slurs. They discussed their strategies, their acquisition of weapons, the specific names of people who had wronged them that they were targeting. Like a lot of paranoid, delusional people, they thought that their big act of violence would be the wake-up call that the world needed, that they were going to be seen as heroes someday and kickstart a revolution, in Harris's words. They even debated which directors should tell their story, Spielberg or Tarantino. The morning of the shooting, Harris left a microcassette tape on the kitchen table. Weirdly, he named it Nixon, on which he said, quote, "It's less than 9 hours now. People will die because of me. It will be a day that will be remembered forever." Regarding the tapes, FBI agent Mark Haselaw said, quote, "You have two individuals who wanted to immortalize themselves. They wanted to be martyrs and document everything they were doing. They wanted to be famous, and they are. They're infamous." The basement tapes have never been released. Some clips were made available for the media, but the actual tapes are still sealed away with Jefferson County, along with all the other evidence of the investigation. Of course, a lot of people question why they've never been released, and some even have gone so far as to speculate that maybe they had a point? That maybe in all their rantings and ravings against society and the system, that maybe they stumbled on some actual good points, and that the same society and system now don't want those points to get out. I'm sure it has more to do with preventing copycats, and just denying them the fame that they so desperately wanted. I would say, though, those tapes would probably be interesting to study in terms of, like, just looking how people, go down the rabbit hole and spiral into madness, especially in a group dynamic. They had a really weird dynamic, the two guys did, that kind of played off each other and made both of them worse. Maybe they have been studied in that way. I don't know. So I don't really know what the rules are here on YouTube when it comes to the word death. I feel like you're only allowed so many deaths before you get demonetized. So I'm just going to lean in on it and see how many different ways I can say that without saying that going forward in this video. It'll be a fun creative exercise. Join me. It'll be fun. If you don't like it, I encourage you to leave an all caps comment about how much you hate YouTube's demonetization practices, and I'm sure YouTube will get right on that. But this section deals with accidental unalivings caught on camera. There, I got unalive out of the way right off the bat. You're welcome. Steve Irwin would actually fit into this segment, but we covered him earlier. Another extremely famous ending by animal attack is Timothy Treadwell. Yeah, these two guys were kind of similar. Like what Steve Irwin was for crocodiles, Timothy wanted to be for bears. Over 13 summers, he camped amongst the bears in the Alaskan wilderness, documenting his interactions and advocating for bear preservation. And in the off-season, he would give presentations and shows to like grade school kids, talk about his adventures with the bears, get them excited about animal protection. He was, let's say, controversial amongst wildlife experts and local officials. They all thought he was insane because bears. But he was absolutely insistent that he was never in any danger, that he had a relationship with these bears, they had a special understanding, that they're intelligent, social animals. He was ready to give his life and die to show the world something important about bears. And on October 5th, 2003, he did exactly that. But while Steve Irwin wrestled crocodiles and was done in by something relatively harmless, Timothy Treadwell wrestled with bears and was done in by a bear. The bear guy was eaten by a bear. My bingo card's on fire. That morning, he and his girlfriend, Amy Huguenard, were setting up a shot with a grizzly bear in the background. She had started rolling the camera, but hadn't even gotten the lens cap off yet when the bear unexpectedly attacked. It expired both of them and consumed their bodies, all while the camera recorded the audio. This footage has never been released to the public. It's currently in the custody of Treadwell's ex, a woman named Jewel Palavac, and she claims she's never listened to it. One person who has, very famously, listened to it is the filmmaker Werner Herzog. He actually made a documentary using Treadwell's footage called Grizzly Man. It's an amazing movie, by the way, if you haven't seen it. It's super interesting and very disturbing. I mean, it's Werner Herzog. But in the movie, he chooses not to share the recording, but he does listen to it and react to it on camera. It was in the YouTube reaction channel phase of his career. Later on in that scene, he urges her to destroy the tape because he says that knowing the tape is out there is always going to haunt her.
And what haunts me is that in all the faces of all the bears that Treadwell ever filmed, I discover no kinship, no understanding, no mercy. I see only the overwhelming indifference of nature.
It's not really known if Joel Palavac destroyed the tape, as he suggested, but it's believed by most people to still be out there somewhere. Although I think any urge to see this is just purely morbid curiosity. I don't think there's a whole lot to actually learn from this here. Although this is a rare example of lost media where you can actually see somebody confirming that it exists, even if you don't get to see it yourself. On February 24th, 2010, a 40-year-old orca trainer at SeaWorld Orlando named Don Brancheau was finishing up the Dine with Shamu show with an orca whale named Tilikum. It was the part after the show where she kind of stands next to Tilikum and they pose for pictures and stuff. They've done this day in and day out for years, but for some reason this time, while Don stood there rubbing Tilikum's head, something snapped. Tilikum, out of nowhere, latched onto her shoulder and hair and dragged her to the bottom of the tank. He smashed her against the wall on the floor with his 12,000-pound body and then held her there for 45 minutes. SeaWorld staff attempted to distract Tilikum with nets and food, but it was too late. By the time they recovered her body, they found her spinal cord was severed, she had fractures to her jawbone and ribs, her scalp was torn from her head, arm torn off, and both knees dislocated. Yeah. This not only happened in front of a live crowd of people, this show was also being recorded. Those tapes went to OSHA for investigation, then they were returned to SeaWorld. This event ended the orca shows at SeaWorld, which is what they were mostly famous for. And by the way, there's a great documentary about this specific orca called Blackfish that will change the way you look at places like SeaWorld. Which, I'm just gonna say, sucks because SeaWorld was like my favorite place when I was a kid. Like, I love the dolphins, I love the orcas, the idea of being a SeaWorld trainer that could swim and work with them. Like, I legitimately wanted to be a marine biologist at one point in my life because of SeaWorld. You'd think I would have learned to swim. By the way, Dawn was not the first person to be relieved of life by this orca. She's not even the second. She's the third. Tilikum had a straight-up body count. Now, I'm sure orcas are a lot like people. You got some aggressive ones and some calm ones, but they are clearly not living their best lives in these water parks, and Tilikum probably should have been put out to sea a long time ago. Anyway, the footage of Don's last moments does exist. It's locked away at SeaWorld headquarters somewhere, probably, and because of that, it's become one of the most famous pieces of lost footage. They say if you're a Gen Xer, you remember the space shuttle disaster. If you're a boomer, you remember JFK. Well, if you were a wrestling fan in the 90s, you remember Owen Hart. On May 29th, 1999, Owen Hart was performing a stunt at the Kemper Arena in Kansas City when something went horribly wrong. He was there to fight an Intercontinental Champion match with The Godfather. That was the main event of the night. And he was going to enter as a character that he played called the Blue Blazer. And he was going to do it by descending via a harness from the rafters above. So this is a gag that he's done several times. This Blue Blazer character was kind of buffoonish. So the joke was that they would have him descend dramatically from the rafters until he gets like just above the ropes. And then he kind of pretends to get tangled by the cords and stuff before he disconnects and then just kind of like falls to the mat buffoonishly. To do this required the use of what they call a quick release mechanism that he could trigger with a cord or a special movement. Well, in Kansas City, they were using a different quick release mechanism than he was used to. And just as he started descending from the rafters, he accidentally disconnected it. That was 80 feet above the ring, and he landed on the edge of the platform. A coroner would later determine that he hit the platform so hard it severed his aorta, and he bled out internally. It only took a couple of minutes. This happened in front of a crowd of 15,000 people. But there were many thousands more watching at home on pay-per-view, and incredibly, at that moment, they actually were showing some kind of promo video, so the people sitting at home, they were just watching some wrestling promo thing, and when they cut back, there were medics and emergency people swarming the ring, and it was chaos. The actual footage of the fall never aired, but it was likely recorded. This footage very likely exists. For the record, his widow blames the WWE for negligence in hiring unqualified riggers who used the incorrect equipment. Now, something that is kind of interesting about this particular piece of lost media is that there's a lot of people that swear that they've seen it and remember it vividly. Like there are heated debates on Reddit with some people swearing on a stack of Bibles that they saw it happen. Like this is a core memory from their childhood. Like this story is often used as an example of the Mandela effect. So yeah, some people are really serious about finding this footage just to, prove to themselves that they're not crazy. For now, though, it's owned by the WWE, who don't have any plans to release it. So that brings us to the final and most disturbing category of lost media, which I've titled Truly Awful. By the way, there's a lot of things that could fit into this category. I mean, that's kind of one of the main reasons why footage gets hidden away, because it's just captured something gruesome and horrifying. But I'll limit myself to two, because this video is already running long, but there are a couple of doozies. Let's start with the year 1974 and a news reporter named Christine Chubbuck. Christine was a reporter at WXLT TV in Sarasota, Florida, and hosted the news discussion program Suncoast Digest, when she became the news herself by doing something nobody had ever done before. She self-exterminated live on air. On the July 15th episode, she surprised her co-hosts and guests by starting the episode with a series of headlines about violent crimes around the country. This is not how it normally started up, but she then queued up a tape from a local reporter on a recent shooting. The tape jammed, so she continued with what seemed like an improvisation, before pulling out a .38 caliber revolver and putting it behind her ear and pulling the trigger. This was broadcast live to all of Sarasota. The station immediately cut to black and threw up a PSA and then played a movie to just kind of have something on the line. Hundreds of viewers called the police and flooded the station's phone lines trying to figure out if it was real or some kind of prank. Unfortunately, it was all too real, and she had planned this for a while. She had actually written out a script for the next person to be on camera to read. She was known to have battled depression for a while. She was well liked by her co-workers, though she had a pretty dark sense of humor. She had actually made jokes about offing herself on camera before. And she actually threw a big party just a few days before it happened, and many commented that she seemed to have been in better spirits than they'd seen her in a long time. In hindsight, they all realized it was a goodbye party. It's actually not unusual, I've read, for people who have decided to in their life to have a sudden boost in their mood because they feel like they found a solution to their problem. Station owner Robert Nelson kept the tapes, and eventually it went to his widower Molly Nelson, who said she has no plans to release them. She transferred possession to a law firm for secure keeping. There is, however, audio of the incident.
In keeping with the WXLT practice of presenting the most immediate and complete reports of local blood and guts news, TV40 presents what is believed to be a television first. In living color, exclusive coverage of an attempted suicide.
Christine's story is sad, and it was dramatized by a movie in 2016, but some believe that she may have actually inspired Paddy Chayefsky as he was writing the film Network. Network is an amazing movie. You need to see it. It's a satire of news sensationalism. It's one of the best movies ever made on the news industry, so go watch it if you haven't. But considering her final message was about blood and guts in journalism, I can see it. I can see it. Our last story, and due to the organizational structure of this video, the most gruesome by far, is the one I had to create its own category for, which I call What the Actual So, content warnings, trigger warnings, all the warnings on this one. This is the story of Armin Mawis, who also went by the nicknames the Master Butcher and the Cannibal of Rotenburg. So you can see where this is going. Armin was generally considered to be a quiet, unassuming guy to his neighbors and friends. He was polite, friendly, but unbeknownst to those around him, he'd been carrying around a fantasy for years that on March 9th, 2001, he finally got to realize. He just kind of always wanted to eat a guy. The thing is, though, he didn't want to murder anybody. He's not a monster. He just wanted to, prepare and eat someone. So he had to find a willing participant to go along with this plan, and believe it or not, he found one. His victim, if that's even the right word for it, was a guy named Bernd Brandis, who was contemplating ending things himself. So the two of them met online, and they found they had, compatible interests. One of them wanted to eat someone. The other one wanted to be eaten. Circle of lifestyle. I think they call that a meet cute. So you know how a lot of Grimm's fairy tales, the old school fairy tales, are actually really violent and messed up? And when you start looking at them, you kind of wonder if maybe that's actually warping some kid's mind somewhere along the way. This is apparently an example of that because Mawis claims that his urge to eat someone came from when he heard this tale of Hansel and Gretel when he was a kid. And apparently he really enjoyed the part where Hansel was prepared to be eaten. But yeah, ever since then, Mawis apparently had a quiet desire to eat someone, but that got accelerated by certain life events like the death of his mother. He claimed that he had always wanted to have a brother, quote, someone to be a part of me. And cannibalism became his way of doing that. And because you can find literally anything on the internet, he was able to find some cannibal enthusiast forums where he began posting messages in chat rooms seeking, quote, men for slaughter. He had a couple of takers early on, but they got cold feet, which tastes terrible, and he didn't pursue it. But I mean, look, to his credit, he didn't want to make anyone do anything against his will. He said, quote, you'd be surprised how many Hansels are whizzing around the internet. But that's when he met Bernd Brandis, who apparently was more interested in being castrated than eaten. But in for a penny, in for a pound, I guess. They had long chats online, making detailed plans for how things would go, sharing their interest in cannibalism. Brandt asked him, and your blood, it tasted good to you? Armin replied, it was quite tasty. Once I was drilling some holes and the drill slipped right into my hand, and that was a real treat. Blood is the juice of life. It contains everything a person needs for nutrition. Brandt then said, then I hope you won't wilt so that you can really see it through without a problem. And then there was a bit where Bernd became concerned that he might not be able to hide all the body parts that don't get eaten. Bernd said, there will be a good bit, like the knees. I hope you have a good hiding place for them. Armin said, I'll dry out the knees and grind them up soon after. Bernd, okay, they're good fertilizer, I heard that once. I see you've thought about it. Good. Sounds like I'm the first. Anyway, after months of planning, they gathered at Mawis' house and at midnight made their way down to the basement, where they set up the video camera, along with 6 knives, a hatchet, and a meat grinder. And then they recorded what happened over the next 4 hours. Okay, so my writer Rachel gave me a very graphic depiction of what happened on that tape, but I'm sure there's absolutely no way I can say any of this on YouTube, so I'm going to put all the details, all the graphic details, on the Nebula video. You can watch that there. But for you guys here on YouTube, I'll just say, if you've ever seen somebody processing a deer or a hog, it was basically that. Mawis froze Brandis' meat in meal-sized portions and ate more than 45 pounds in the following months. And since I know you're wondering, he did say that, quote, the flesh tastes like pork, a little bit more bitter, stronger. It tastes quite good. He also claimed that Brandis spoke better English than him and that his English got better after he ate Brandis. The murder was discovered by an Austrian student in 2002. He kind of stumbled on some of Mawis' posts online and messaged him directly, asking if he had actually killed anyone. When Mawis said yes, the Austrian went to the authorities. And today I learned that Austrians are snitches. Now the trial was actually kind of tricky for the lawyers because it turns out cannibalism is not against the law in Germany. And Brandis very clearly volunteered, so there was absolutely no debate around that. So in the end, believe it or not, Maiwis was only sentenced to 8.5 years. But the courts do keep adding years to his sentence because it seems like Maiwis still harbors a desire to eat humans, per a prison psychologist. As of 2020, he's now been allowed to go out of the prison for supervised excursions under disguise. He's now a vegetarian. So to wrap things up, I thought maybe I could talk for a second about the phenomenon of lost media itself. Like, what is it about lost media that just makes people lose their minds? Like, I kind of feel like it's a byproduct of living in a time with the internet and with ubiquitous camera phones everywhere. Like, we live in a world where everything is recorded. Everything can be known, everything can be found. And it just feels wrong when it can't be, you know? But that is a very new phenomenon. In the past, it was just kind of assumed that most things were lost. Like, you want to hear a crazy thought? The entire Egyptian civilization was kind of a lost media until 1822. Because nobody knew how to read hieroglyphics. All those etchings on the walls that told the story of their vast history, all of that was unreadable. Egypt was lost media. Kinda. It's a stretch, but I'm going with it. The point is, I think the entire concept of lost media is kind of a product of our current moment. Because only in a time as hyper-documented as this one would the idea of not having footage of something be considered bizarre. Or maybe people just like the thrill of the chase, I don't know. As cameras integrate more seamlessly into our daily lives, it's not unfeasible that in the future there'll be a technology that just records everything all the time. Like, everything that happens just gets recorded on some kind of, like, global, like, ledger that can be referred to during any conflicts or misunderstandings. Kind of makes me think of that show Devs that came out a few years ago where he was working on some kind of like quantum device that allowed him to see through time. You know, something like that. Although, I don't know, if there's one thing that I have learned watching younger generations come up and grow up around social media, it's that I am really glad that I did not have a way of sharing every thought I had with the world when I was a teenager because I had some terrible thoughts. So yeah, maybe I don't want all my movements recorded. Also, with the rise of streaming platforms and the loss of physical media like DVDs, there's actually, I think there's going to be a lot more lost media in the future. I mean, a streaming platform can just remove a movie or a show anytime they want, and then it's just gone. Now, granted, it's probably archived away somewhere, but you and I, we can't get to it. As far as we're concerned, it's lost. Wouldn't it be nice if there was some kind of rule against that? Like, shouldn't that be abolished? I think so. You gotta take a stand on something, people. And if the idea of someone making a passionate argument about a very particular thing is fun and interesting to you, you might want to check out the comedy show Abolish Everything. Abolish Everything is a show where professional comedians present an argument to abolish something in society. Everything from specific baby names to holding doors to Cybertrucks. And then a panel of improvisers representing the establishment tries to rip their arguments to shreds. It's part stand-up, part TED Talk, part roast. It's a live show. They perform at a comedy club in New York, so it's got that fun live show energy. It's a lot of fun, and I'm frankly furious I didn't think of it first. That is, of course, just one of dozens of Nebula originals that you just can't find anywhere else, including my own Mysteries of the Human Body series. There's also kind of a secret project that I'm going to be working on with them that I can't quite talk about yet. Nebula started as a place where a bunch of creators got together, including me, and decided to basically just build our own platform, a place where we can actually own our own work and have some say in our future. So we all upload our content ad-free there, but a lot of us, including me, put extra stuff in our Nebula videos. I tend to upload them uncensored or include some extra facts or context. In fact, there were a few stories in this video that got cut for time. They're in the Nebula cut. People often put out like supplementary videos that go along with their YouTube videos for more context, a little bit more content, and most of us put our videos out a week early. The point is, if you like the video that you just saw, there are over 200 creators over at Nebula doing cool, interesting content just like this, and you can see all of it for only $3 a month. That's if you go to nebula.tv/Joe Scott, you'll get 40% off the annual subscription. That makes it about $36 a year. $3 a month. Or, just saying, if you want to get it for the rest of your life, they do have a $300 lifetime subscription, which will pay off, by the way, because you'll want to live a long life to get the most value out of that subscription, which means you'll make better life decisions. Didn't think of that, did you? Anyway, Nebula's a great deal. It supports a lot of great creators, and you'll get a lot of extra stuff, like the extra stories that you'll find in this video. Or if you just want to check out Abolish Everything, you can do that too. Just scan the QR code or go to the link down in the description to give it a shot. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. Alright, so this was a long video. This was a disturbing video. Congratulations on making it to the end. If you enjoyed it, I'll put a little thumbnail up here for another mystery video that you might like. Mystery videos are a lot of fun. Oh, and while you're still here, Tritium Tour shirts, still available. This is our new merch drop. This is our biggest merch drop we've ever done. Nicest shirt we've ever made. You got all the dates from Poughkeepsie Civic Center on the back there. They're selling like hotcakes, guys. I don't know how bad hotcakes sell. It's a weird analogy. We got a link down in the description. There's a QR code here. Limited time. We've only got a few more weeks on it, but this has been highly requested by a lot of people for a long time, and we finally got it. Really excited about it. Go get one. But I think that's all we got for today. You guys go out there, have an eye-opening rest of the week. Stay safe, and I'll see you next Monday. Love you guys. Take care.